Done, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of DY Patil University School of Management, I welcome you all for the webinar on managerial aspects of artificial intelligence. And now I would like to call upon our coordinator, Dr. Sapna Suri, to take over the event. Dr. Sapna, over to you.
A very good evening to one and all. Myself, Dr. Sapna Suri, Associate Professor and MB Course Coordinator, would like to welcome you all on today's webinar on managerial aspects in artificial intelligence and fintech in association with Indian Merchant Chambers, MSME Chamber of Commerce and Industry of India, New Delhi, WTC World Trade Center, Navi Mumbai, Maharashtra Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture, MCCIA, Global Exports India, Global TV. I wish to throw some light on our university. DY Patil deemed to be university is UGC recognized. We have been AICT approved. We have been NAC re-accredited A. We have been ranked at 72 by NRIF. I would now like to take an opportunity to introduce to you our own DY Patil deemed to be University School of Management. We have been located at Sector 4 CBD Bilapur, Navi Mumbai. We have state-of-art infrastructure. We provide 100% placement assistance. We have a 3-year BBA course, the admission for which is open. We have a 2-year MBA course, the admission for which is open. Due to this pandemic, we are providing provisional admission to our students. Whoever wishes to take admission can get in touch with us. I would now like to introduce to you Dr. Vani Kamath. Dr. Vani Kamath is currently the Dean of School of Management. She's a business management graduate and a postgraduate from Mangalore University. She has completed her PhD in finance. She has more than 35 research papers published in national and international journals of high repute. It includes Scopus Index and UGC Care journals. She has 16 years of teaching experience. She has been awarded with Best Teacher by Higher Education Forum on the occasion of Teachers' Day. She was also the Board of Studies member of Mumbai University affiliated colleges. I welcome you, Dr. Vani Kamath. Now I would request Dr. Vani Kamath to kindly address the participants.
Thank you, Dr. Sapna, for your kind words. I hope I am audible.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So please allow me to share my screen. I'm going to do a small presentation on our institute and also on the university. DY Patil Group was formed by Dr. DY Patil, the former governor of Tripura, Bihar and Kolkata. He is the founder chancellor of DY Patil University. With him, we also have Dr. Vijay D. Patil, the president of DY Patil University and the president of DY Patil Sports Academy. He is the president of Mumbai Cricket Association too. Dr. Ajinkya D.Y. Patil is the president of Ajinkya D.Y. Patil University. He is the president of DY Patil Group and pro-chancellor of DY Patil University. DY Patil deemed to be University, Navi Mumbai, is established under Section 3 of the UGC Act 1956. It is NAC accredited with A grade and it is amongst the top 10% of the Indian universities. Dr. Shirish Patil is the Honorable Vice Chancellor of DY Patil deemed to be University. He is also the ex-dean of DY Patil Hospital. DY Patil deemed to be University School of Management, Navi Mumbai, is located in Sector 4 CBD Belapur. The accreditations which we have on our credit are AICT has accredited us and we are accredited under UGC. The recognitions which we have are Times Business School has ranked us as #1 private university in Mumbai. The Week has ranked us 13th in multidisciplinary universities in West Zone. Career 360 has ranked DYPUSM with AAA+ as India's best university. BW Business World has ranked us 97th in India's top business school. Business Today has ranked us 80th in business school category, and Business World has ranked us 74th in the business school category. I'm proud to say that DYPUSM was awarded with the second prize on innovation. The students are they are not only our customers, but they have also made us proud by winning various awards and accolades at the national and international level. So some of the awards which I would like to mention here is that they have been awarded on innovation for inventing home systems, and they are carrying this as a startup venture. It gives me immense pleasure also to announce that DYPUSM has bagged an award in excellence in education. NIRF has ranked us 72nd in the year 2021. The Best Teacher Awards, some of the glimpses of that, wherein our senior teachers have been awarded with the Best Teacher Awards. Student Awards, our students have made us proud in winning various awards in various cultural events at the national and international level. The teaching staff, all the faculties at DYPUSM have completed PhD. 90% of the faculties are with more than 10 years of experience. All the faculties have published their research papers in Scopus Index journals, and more than 50% of our faculties are from the industry. The non-teaching staffs. As all of us know, that the pandemic has impacted the education industry too. And in the last 2 years, we have taken this as an opportunity for conducting various online conferences. And we have invited guests from all over the country and also from abroad. So such an example which I would like to quote here is that we recently conducted an online conference in the month of March, wherein we have invited the delegates and also the speakers from other countries, wherein they have come and shared their knowledge and insights with all our students. The leadership series webinars are the webinars which we are conducting in this year. So some of the glimpses of that are there in front of us, and I'm proud to say that today's webinar is the 40th webinar which we are having in this year. And last year we have conducted it under the series known as Knowledge Series. DYPUSM has its own YouTube channel known as DYPUSM Webinar. So I request all the students who are watching this YouTube to go through this channel and like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Programs we offer at our institute are 3 programs, that is BBA, which is a 3-year full-time program, MBA, a 2-year full-time program, and PhD, a 3-year full-time program. Under MBA in Core Management, we have MBA in Marketing Management, Finance Management, Human Resource Management, Operations Management, Systems Management, and Entrepreneurship Management. So anyone who wants to pursue the career in any of these areas can take up this course. We also have the courses in sectoral programs like International Business Management, Sports Business Management, Health and Hospital Management, Pharmaceutical Industry Management, Biotechnology Management, Banking and Insurance, Logistics and Supply Chain Management, and Aviation Management. And it gives me immense pleasure to share with you all that we are the pioneers in starting these sectoral programs at our institute. And anyone who is not from the commerce field can opt for all these courses. The intercollegiate sports event of the institute is known as Colosseum, which is a 3-day event which is practiced and which is celebrated every year by our students. The cultural activities is known as Paramount, which is a 4-day event, wherein our students participate with full enthusiasm. Some of the glimpses of our cultural events. DYPUSM believes in giving back to the society too. So we have had various campaigns, we had various drives which prove that we also believe in giving back to the society and all to the stakeholders of the society. Some of the examples which I can keep here is we have recently had plantation drive and road safety campaign. The institutional social projects are the part of the curriculum wherein we encourage our students to help the needy and the poor. And our students have gone to the villages and they have delivered services in marketing the products of rural women. Those 2 examples which I can quote here is Drishti and Tessa. The testimonials from the recruiters talks everything about our students and also about our institute. And I'm also proud to say that even during the pandemic, we were able to get the full placement for our students. Our recruiters. Under core management, we have PepsiCo, Voltas, Lenovo, Godrej, Raymond, Tech Mahindra, Amazon, Future Group, Marico, etc. coming to our institute and taking our students. Under banking and insurance sector, we have S Bank, IDBI Bank, State Bank of India, ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, Dhanalakshmi Bank, and so on. Under health and hospital, we have hospitals like Apollo Hospitals, Seven Hills Hospital, Hinduja Hospital, Kohinoor Hospital, and many more. Please take down the numbers of the people whose numbers are visible here. If you want to take any admission in a BBA, you can contact these people. And as already mentioned, we have a BBA program, which is a 3-year full-time program, which offers specializations like marketing, finance, international business, banking, insurance, and hospital administration. MBA is a 2-year full-time program under which we have sectoral and core programs. So anyone who wants to take admission can get in touch with the people. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Sapna.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vani Kamath. I would now like to introduce to you Professor Dr. R Gopal. Professor Dr. R Gopal is basically an engineer from IIT Kharagpur in mechanical engineering. Subsequently, he did his MBA, ICWA PhD in postdoctoral DLitt. Professor Dr. R Gopal is currently the Director, HOD, and former Dean of D.Y. Patil Dean to be University School of Management. He has more than 27 years of corporate experience at Bush India Limited, Larsen & Toubro, Tata Economic Consultancy Services, and in Siemens. Additionally, he has more than 30 years of teaching experience in various B schools in and around Mumbai in the areas of marketing, finance, and general management, etc. He was also the visiting faculty in several B schools in USA. In USA, he conducted several programs on topics like how to do business in India. He has also published more than 200 research papers both in India and foreign journals. He has been awarded the Best Outstanding Research Paper at the Asia Pacific Marketing Conference held in Malaysia. He is also a reviewer to several international journals, having a high impact factor. He is well conversant with the rules of AICTE as well as UGC rules, also the New Education Policy 2020. He is a guide for MPhil and PhD students of several universities in India. More than 100 research scholars have received their PhD and MPhil degree under his guidance. He is also the author of several books and is the chief editor to several national and international journals of repute. Additionally, he has written several books on management which have been highly received by student and corporate community. Some of the books that he has published are Marketing Strategy and Application, Case Study in Business and Industry Management. Few books which are under print are Research Methodology and Marketing Finance. He has successfully conducted several webinars on topics like Impact Studies due to COVID-19, National Education Policy 2020, Career Development, etc. He has also conducted many national and international conferences. The latest has been on the theme Make for Bharat Go Global. Professor Dr. R Gopal is a recipient of many awards. To name a few are Rashtravidya Saraswati Puraskar awarded by International Institute of Education and Management, Rashtra Vikas Ratna Award awarded by Economic Growth Society of India, Glory of India Award awarded by Indo-British Society London, Rajiv Gandhi Award awarded by Rajiv Gandhi Education Excellence Award, Best Teacher Award awarded by Higher Education Forum, Best Management Teacher Award awarded in Management Education by MPC and Global and Knowledge Cafe, Educationist Award by National International Compodium, New Delhi, Star of Asia Award, and many, many more. MSME Chamber of Commerce and Industry of India, New Delhi has declared Professor Dr. R Gopal as a Corona warrior. His motto is always to transform every student into an achiever so that every student will create a success story. I welcome you, Professor Dr. R Gopal. I would request Professor Dr. R Gopal to kindly address the participants.
Thank you, Dr. Sapna. Let me at the outset welcome Mr. Rishikesh, Mr. Nirav, Mr. Sanchit Mehra, as well as Mr. Nimish Mehta. thank you, all of you all, and from the bottom of my heart, I really thank you because for taking your valuable time out and spending time with us, in trying to spread knowledge. Let me also take this opportunity, and before I hope I've not forgotten to welcome Nirav Modi, our alumni student. Nirav, I'm taking you for granted, yaar. मैं क्या करूँ बोलो? You are part of
No
me.
worries, sir. It's a privilege being on this call, sir.
So that's how I missed you, yeah. Sorry, yaar.
No worries at all, sir.
Yeah. Before I begin my welcome speech and introduction to the topic, I would request of only one thing from all the participants who are here, not only on the Zoom but also on the YouTube, Facebook, Global TV, etc. That please get yourself vaccinated. We are touching the level of 100 crores, which is the world's largest vaccination that has been done. Maybe another 15 days time or so. So please get yourself vaccinated because that's very, very important. And it's also important for you to note that the government of Maharashtra has allowed us to start the college from October 20, and they put a rider that provided the students are at least vaccinated to a single dose. And therefore, it's very important that all of you all get yourself vaccinated. The GDP, has been growing, and as I can see from the, from the investments that are taking place and the production figures that are coming in, I'm quite sure that the government of India prediction of 9 to 10% GDP in this fiscal year will materialize. But however, the flip part is that the unemployment is quite high at the rate of about 8 to 9%. And why is it so? Why is it so? And more so because when you look at it, the people say there are a lot of studies which say that MBAs are one of the highest unemployment figures up to the tune of 40–50%. Though it is not valid for our institute because in our institute, almost everybody has got placement even in the year of the pandemic. But if you try to look at why it's happening because when we talk to the corporates, what do we find? We find that the corporates say, we give certain weightages, and what is that weightage? 20 to 25% weightage is given to fundamental knowledge, 40% weightage is given to application knowledge, and about 35–40% is given to the holistic development of the child. That means, do you have communication skills? Do you have additional knowledge? Are you a guy who is able to work in a team, etc., etc. And today, after the pandemic, there's one new angle which has come in, and that is, are you aware of the Industry 4.0 subjects? And what do I mean by the Industry 4.0? So 4.0 subjects, I'm talking of the very, very backbone of the industrial growth in the technology sector, that is artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, robotics, data analytics, etc., etc. And if you don't have that, then they say you remain unemployed. Now, luckily for us, what we have done in our institute is we are always one step ahead of many other colleges and many other institutes. So what we have already done is we have a non-credit program which is running, and which we practically made it compulsory for all the students. And this program is basically on AI, on data analytics, and as well as on robotics. And this is something which we feel very important. And why do I feel very important? Is because I feel it's very important because the industry requires these type of subjects. And I'm quite confident this is the one, the additional knowledge given to our students along with the holistic development and the application knowledge is something which is going to make our students stand out amongst others, and thereby fulfilling the motto of D.Y. Patil University School of Management, and that is that every student of ours shall be a successful student. And we always believe in students first. And to that extent, therefore, the pandemic has shown that what we started 5 years back, 7 years back, that is the learning management system, has come out very useful to them. And what is the learning management system? Our faculties have put up all the lectures, all the videos, all the presentations, all the recordings on the LMS so that the student can go through them whenever he gets a time, whenever he gets the energy, and most importantly, whenever he gets the internet, because in many of the rural areas in central India, we find the internet is still very, very weak. I got a query in my inbox at the last webinar, and it said, "Sir, how did you manage to get almost 100%? I won't say 100%. I'll say almost 100% because placements." And one of the biggest reasons for that is we have signed MOUs, or we have tied up with several organizations like the WTC, the World Trade Center, the IMC, the Indian Merchant Chamber, the MSME Chamber of Commerce and Industry, New Delhi, the MSME Chamber of Commerce and Agricultural Development, Global TV, Global Exports, etc., and many such organizations. And what is the biggest advantage in all these organizations? Is having tied up with them, we get live projects from them. What do I mean by live projects? That means students can go on a 2-day or a 3-day week, 3 days in a week to the organization, work with the organization, understand what's happening out there, so that they have some idea about the industrial experience also. Number one, there's a lot of industry academic interaction which takes place because of these tie-ups, and we get a lot of faculties who are willing to come and talk to our students and share their experiences as guest lectures, so that the advantage of this is the student has a lot of knowledge about how the industry behaves, how we can apply what he reads in the textbook, whatever application that the faculties are talking about, the various concepts, he can see it actually taking place in the industry. Typically, let me give you an example. We have, for example, something in marketing or in strategic management called as the Michael Porter's 5-force field model. And one of the faculties who came to me, the visiting faculty who came to me, said, "Sir, this Michael Porter's 5-force field model is a bakwas because nobody uses it in the industry." So I asked him a very simple question. I said, "Do you do project planning?" He said, "Yes, sir. Project planning is the heart of my job." I said, "Now in the project planning, do you do the market analysis?" He said, "Yes, sir, I do the market analysis." I said, do you look at the environment, the government policies, etc.? I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yes, sir, we do all that." I said, "What is that called in Michael Porter?" Then he suddenly said, "So that's called as, it's called as, oh my God, barriers to entry, or they are called as entry barriers." Then I said, "Do you look at the demand side, what the customer requires, etc.? He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "What is that called?" It's called buyer analysis. Then I asked him, I said, "Do you look at whether the raw materials are available? What are the problems that you face with the raw materials?" He said, "Yes, sir. That's also very important." I said, "What is that called?" Then he said, "Sir, it's called the supplier analysis." I said, "Now, do you look at the competitors?" He said, "Yes, sir, we look at the competitors." I said, "What is all this?" I said, "Don't you look at a 5-year horizon and see whether new technologies are coming in, etc.? I said, "What is all this? Isn't this called as the industry feasibility report?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "That's exactly what we academicians call it as Michael Porter's 5-force field model. You call it as industry field analysis. I call it as industry field analysis so long as I was at Siemens. And here in the academy, we call it." So this is what I'm trying to tell you. This advantage of correlating what we learn in the academic world with the application knowledge with my dear faculties who have more than 10 to 15 years of experience in the corporate world are able to, and they present to you you are able to correlate with what is happening in the industry side. And that is what I really love when I call these guest lecturers or industry people to come to my organization and talk. And it's my earnest request to all three of y'all, or all four of y'all, Rishi, Mera, Mehta, and Nirav, please come to the college, address our students. We can talk in terms of maybe, modification of certain subjects, certain courses, introduce all of this. Maybe today you could look at the artificial intelligence, the course that we have, the syllabus that we have. You could make some suggestions to it. You could come and you can come and share a few lectures with the students. And let me also tell you that this is not something which I'm asking for in charity. It's not a charity at all. Okay, I don't believe in charity. So please come and we can discuss all of this. We can work all of this, and we look forward to meeting you in person. And that's very important. And children who are there on the YouTube and industry people who are there on the YouTube, this artificial intelligence is very important. And why is it so important? Because that's the backbone. I'm repeating again, that's the backbone of all future technology. And I'm a very good fan of Pichai, of Google. And if you look at it, he talks in terms of AI being used for medical diagnostics, AI being used for supply chain logistics, AI being used to identify like a GPS. It's now able to tell you whether the person we want to meet in my college, supposing you come and want to meet me, he's working on the concept that through AI, he is able to tell whether Dr. Gopal is there in DY Patil office or not at that particular point of time. So there is a lot of openings which has opened up. AI is the backbone of cryptocurrency. AI is the backbone of blockchain technology. You name it, it's there. And that's why I said the managerial aspects, I do not want my MBA students and my BBA students to start working on the programming part of the AI, but I want them to understand the managerial aspects of AI, and that is why we have kept this as managerial aspects of AI and fintech. Why fintech? Because fintech is the backbone of financial planning. Large organizations today give loans, take loans, manage everything, manage the entire investments of various people, only due to fintech, of financial technology as it is called. So we should know all of these aspects, and that is why I have kept this webinar today. Children, I just want to tell you all one very important thing. I've got a lot of requests from various people, and they are saying, sir, we could not attend your webinar because the net is not there, this is not there, that is not there. I have a lot of other work. I had other work and therefore I could not do it, etc. So what we did was we put the whole thing on the YouTube, and we've got a separate YouTube channel. So I think when you go to the YouTube search, you can just type DYP-USM and you will see the whole lot of webinars, and I'm very proud to tell you that till today we've conducted more than 40 to 50 webinars, including those which are not conducted by DYP-USM, but where I am and my colleagues are speakers, including those we have put up on the webinar so that the knowledge is imparted and you children, you industry people understand what's happening and what role we as academicians play, so that our students, and this is what helps our students to get placement. And I'm telling you this very proudly because the minimum salary that our students get is around 5.5 lakhs per annum. And the maximum has gone even to 11 or 12. And the average has been something like about 7 to 8 lakhs per annum. Now, if I work on the minimum, your ROI comes to be more than 100%. That means you are able to recover your investment in the school, which you've done in first year or second year, within a year itself. And that's something which you must all appreciate. With these few words, I would like to once again welcome all my speakers out here. And I want to also mention one last line, because now that the government of India has allowed us to start the offline courses from October 20th. So we started our preparations in that direction. And therefore, today's webinar will be the last webinar for this year, major webinar. I'm talking about the major webinar. We would still have a lot of minor webinars, minor guest lectures, etc. But today's webinar will be the last webinar for this year. And we are ending it with a very, very important Industry 4.0 topic, and that is managerial aspects of artificial intelligence and fintech. So with these few words, let me welcome all my students, all my faculties, all the industry people who are there, and the very, very knowledgeable and important speakers like Rishikesh, Nirav, Mehra, Mehta, etc. And all the other speakers who have been in the last 40, 45, 50 years webinars that we have. And let me say thank you very much to all of you all, and God bless all of you all. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you, Sapna. Now I think you could take over.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. R Gopal. I would now like to introduce to you Dr. Priya Viz. Dr. Priya Viz has around 17 years of experience, including industry and academics. She has worked in companies like Accenture Services Private Limited, Fisher India, published more than 25 research papers in various national and international and Scopus Index journals. She has received the Best Research Paper Award in International Research Conference 2020, organized by Business School and Research Center Pune. She has taught many subjects related to IT. I welcome you, Dr. Priya. I would now request Dr. Priya to kindly address the participants.
Thank you, Dr. Sapna. Thank you so much for your kind words. Good evening, everyone. I'm very thankful to our beloved director, Dr. Gopal sir, and Dr. Vani ma'am, our dean, for giving me this opportunity to hold this webinar on managerial aspects of artificial intelligence and fintech. Now, today we all talk about AI. We are using virtual assistant. We are using Siri in our phones. So what is this AI actually? So it is the ability of a machine to display human-like capabilities such as reasoning, learning, planning, and creativity. It will bring new criteria for success, collaboration, capabilities, information sharing, and decision making. We are using different types of AI. We are having softwares of AI. We have virtual assistants, speech and face recognition. We are using robots, as mentioned by Gopal sir. We have autonomous cars also, which are using the concept of AI. Even in this pandemic, COVID-19, AI has been used in thermal screening at various airports across the globe. Another major topic for today is fintech, how fintech is impacting the banks or how it is helping. Now, what is fintech? The meeting of finance with technology is fintech. And is this fintech a boon to the bank, or it will be a problem for the bank? So our team of experts today, our esteemed speakers, will have a deeper insight on the aspects of AI and fintech. So over to you, Sapna.
Thank you so much, Dr. Priya. I would now like to introduce to you our first speaker for the day, Mr. Sanchit Mehra. He is an engineer graduate and MBA in finance from a renowned business school. He has also been an educator, and he's also a blockchain wrangler. He's also co-authored to many research papers on earnings management by Indian corporates. He has introduced to a big number crunching and predictive analytics using AI, ML, and was hooked by its beauty. He has since built predictive models for addressing supply chain inefficiencies, computer vision, and NLP systems. At Katina, he handles strategy and product design. His drive for unfettered innovation is kept in check by the need to pay the bills. Talking about his past experience, he has worked directly with industry teams and leaders to implement blockchain based solutions, successfully delivered the following blockchain solutions: supply chain finance use case on blockchain at Yes Bank Limited, Mahindra Finance Limited, IPDC Bangladesh, Index, the insurance document sharing respiratory developed on Hyperledger Fabric with a platform economy driven by documents trade, KYC registration on blockchain for NSDL with permissioned oracles for automation, and many, many more. His key innovation driving to businesses built on open source track and open standards, scale operation elasticity with no vendor lock-ins. Blockchain lenders allow trustless business access while reducing ops and overheads. Digital persona of assets and digital identifiers of permissioned actors are originated and validated by blockchain for self sovereignty of data. I welcome you, Mr. Sanchit Mehra. Now I would request Mr. Sanchit Mehra to kindly address the participants.
Hi, thanks, team. First of all, let me just thank everybody because you've been very prompt with the invitation as well. In fact, I received this invitation over a month ago. And being a complete novice in this topic, especially in AI, I mean, my resume does have some things in AI, but I'm primarily a dev, a server-side developer working on blockchain these days. And so when I received this invitation on the 11th of September, obviously the first thing that I did was to start working on it on 12th. By 12, I mean 12 p.m. today. So I do have a deck that I've prepared. In management, it's called just in time. So I've just prepared it in time for this demo. Matter of fact, I just had enough time to also take a shower before coming in. So I'll just quickly check if I can share my screen as well, and we'll get started. Can somebody confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So a bit about the topic first. So the topic seemed pretty vast to me, and I've decided to break it down into specific bite-sized chunks. I want to take up this specific idea on how to manage fintech solutions first, and then maybe introduce AI into the mix as well, and see where it lands us. So a bit about us. Katina is now a 5-year-old company. We've been duly incorporated under the Indian Companies Act 1956. I don't know about the other acts involved as well. Rajesh, my co-founder, is more well-versed in those things. I, like I said, come with a dev background. Well, I've actually been in the dev field primarily for the last decade. Before that, I trained as a process engineer from ITUT and did my MBA from there as well. But at Katina, we focus primarily on enterprise solutions. We are more a tech fin rather than a fintech, which means that we are a tech-heavy team. Our interfaces are primarily with banks, fintechs, insurtechs, companies like that, and we end up being the tech enablers for them. So whenever you think about a company providing infrastructure as far as bank onboarding, KYC, loan management systems is concerned, that's what we do. We don't have our own balance sheets, at least we don't have as of now, but that's what we plan on doing. For more details, I think this QR code actually works, so you can always scan it and land up on a site to know more. A bit about the agenda that I've planned for today. Like I said, I want to start with fintech and its adopters, what actually is driving fintech growth, not just in India, but in the industry in general. I want to also take up a few business value propositions that I personally have worked on as part of our multiple involvements on client projects. I want to then take up this more important topic of managing fintech solutions. I feel that we pay a lot of lip service to management. Maybe we just give it a slide or two. I want to delve deeper into this idea of how you would end up managing something which would obviously always have some kind of a regulatory oversight as well. And finally, I want to take up this point of emerging trends as far as fintech is concerned. So the first couple of topics, I think we will cover fintech in general. As soon as we land over into the managing fintech solutions side of things, I'll talk a bit about AI. At least that's the bit about AI that I've learned in the last 2 hours. And then we'll get into the emerging trends, which is something that I actually know something about. So here goes nothing. So fintech is, like I think it's been explained pretty well by Dr. Vich as well. It's actually the confluence of finance and tech. It's not something new. It's always been there. The adoption of it in a more democratic persona is definitely new. And I think, if I were to say it right, the idea would be that, there are a few things driving this adoption as well. So there's obviously the regulatory environment, there's always the tech environment, but I think there's also a lot of private equity involved. There's a lot of private equity interest involved, which is driving a lot of fintech adoption as well. Whenever you see a new Cred or a new Freecharge, any such company which doesn't make any profits ever, and you see them achieving unicorn valuations, I think the idea is pretty clear. There's a lot of investor interest which sees these companies achieving high levels of profit in years to come as well. So for me, I actually like to boil it down into a few things. First things first, this is what things used to be not too long ago. I say it too long ago, but this is exactly what banks used to do maybe 6-8 odd years ago. So they were all monoliths. They had their own databases. If you had to talk to a bank, you probably had an offline process of getting onboarded. And every single time you got onboarded, there would be a long, tedious onboarding process of whitelisting your IPs. They would have non-standard APIs that you would have to integrate with, all those things. Those things, thankfully, have changed. What we see right now is a widespread adoption because we see fintechs mushrooming every single place. And that has happened because of 3 things. The first of those is definitely cloud. The rise of the public cloud has essentially meant that all the tech barriers to entry, which were preventing new companies with, let's say, a couple of founders from building their own PayPal, have now gone away. So with the rise of AWS and Azure and clouds like these, what you have now is a way for startups to short circuit their dev work. So instead of focusing on infrastructure, you can just have your lean product development teams focus directly on product development and execution. In fact, if you are involved in managing your infrastructure on any of these private cloud, public clouds like AWS or Azure, you would obviously immediately have the benefit of having a regulatory compliant environment. So typically they always have some kind of a SOC certification, a PCI DSS compliance out of the box, which means that if these were to be things which were preventing you from building something, they are now not there. You can very easily build something on their clouds, on their certifications, and supercharge your product development phases as well. The second key indicator or force driving the fintech adoption is definitely open source. So this is a very small microcosm of all the technologies which have been powering the adoption of fintech out there. But my point remains the same, right? So we actually have been able to short circuit product deliveries and development by immediately relying on trusted third-party libraries. It's not true just of any other library, it's also true of AI in general as well. So Google, Facebook, Microsoft, AWS, they all use AI or machine learning in one way or the other. And pretty much every one of these has open sourced their code bases as well, as far as the specific libraries are concerned. TensorFlow happens to be one of them, which is there seen in the icon as well. But it's not the only one as well, right? The point being, all these larger companies are now in the process of taking up mindshare as well. So the battle for supremacy doesn't really reside on who controls the cloud, but also who controls the developer mind space. And a lot of companies are now involved directly in open sourcing their code bases of AI or even non-AI libraries, so that more and more third-party developers can start adopting them, which actually ends up making their recruitment/hiring processes that much faster. Just think about it. If I am a company that has to hire somebody for my AI ops, would it be easier or more difficult for me to hire somebody if they already had some experience with my, let's say, with my open source code base? So this is the entire thing which is driving this open source adoption as well. And it's not just true of AI, it's pretty much true of every single tech interface out there as well. The good thing is there are a couple other technologies which have been open source. One of them, which is very key here, is Node.js, which has essentially meant that people who were earlier just front-end developers now can use their entire JavaScript language understanding and take it back into the server-side stack as well. You now also have libraries or other client libraries which let you interface with TensorFlow as well. So instead of Python, if you are a JavaScript developer, you can use a Node.js SDK to communicate with TensorFlow daemon as well. So what this has done is, by taking this idea of JavaScript everywhere, you have democratized knowledge and you have made the barrier to entry very low for new developers as well. The third major force behind the fintech revolution that I feel is definitely APIs. And it's not just any other API. I think it's bank APIs, to be very specific. So banks for a fairly long time, like I said earlier, were involved in this idea of building custom opaque interfaces which would not work with each other. There would be no interoperability and things would break every single time you came up with a new version. Now, whether it's regulatorily determined, as is the case in UK, Europe. In UK, it's Open Banking Initiative. It's the OBIA group, which does PSD2. Or it's Europe in general, or it's the regulatorily compliant sandboxes in Singapore through BAS, or it's the business-driven API adoption in banking. The point remains the same. Banks have now started opening up their core banking systems and have started exposing their functionalities through APIs. Now, as long as these APIs are regulatorily determined, what you have immediately is a way for third-party developers to be able to access standard API interfaces. It's not always the case, however. So, obviously, with regulatorily compliant APIs, you'll always have a standard interface. In case of an environment which looks something like India, where you typically don't have a regulatory compliance on APIs, what you do have is a bank-led initiative where banks are now in the process of onboarding fintechs. They're in the process of onboarding more e-commerce companies, bank correspondents, all of these through their digital channels. Every single large bank that you know of now has a digital economy in place, whether it's Yes Bank, ICICI, HDFC, all of these has a digital economy and a digital strategy in place, which means that all of the open source technologies that I just mentioned, they're already using them. And all these APIs that you see right now, banks would, in one way or the other, already have them on the dev portals, which is again one way of gaining mindshare. The thing about mindshare is once you are entrenched in a developer's ecosystem, it's very difficult to remove yourself from there. So banks, in a way, are looking at fintechs not just as a threat, but also as partners, because once you have your API entrenched into a successful application, your growth is directly tied to the growth of that startup's application as well. So with this, I think we now have a basis, or rather an idea of what actually is driving fintech revolution right now. So it's cloud, it's definitely APIs, and it's open source. Now, with these things in mind, let's see some of the business propositions that you can build on top of them. So business propositions will definitely use all the three indicators and identify that I mentioned earlier. But specifically in the case of an economy like ours, India, there's another thing which matters, which is the Jamstack. So in India, so if you are from a development background, Jamstack would be something totally different. In the Indian context, Jamstack means Jan Dhan, the banking schemes, the Aadhaar, and mobile phones. So these are three crucial pieces of infrastructure that we have been able to develop in India, which have been highly critical in evolving the fintech revolution, not just in the retail, but also the wholesale space. So the first value proposition that I really love is digital lending. So we all know of a typical scenario of you being given a loan in 30 seconds, a minute or so. Matter of fact, it's actually harder to find a Tinder date these days than it is to find a loan, even without a CIBIL score. There are actual startups out there or even fintechs out there who would help you get a loan if you did not have any CIBIL score at all, if you had no credit, not a negative credit even. All these things have been made available and they have been made possible primarily on the basis of a few things. So fintechs are smart, right? So they already know how to work on cloud, how to work on open source, and how to use APIs. So they thought, you know what, instead of focusing on APIs from a single source, why don't we aggregate data from multiple API sources as well? So it's not just your banking transaction history that a fintech would look at. They would look at your Uber receipts. They'd look at your big basket purchases. They'd look at your Amazon purchases. They'd look at how you end up working in a cash on delivery model on Flipkart as well. They end up looking through your Facebook chats. So it's not just a single focused data stream that they're looking at. They're looking at pretty much every single data point that they can get their hands on. And this is driving digital lending like no time ever. So the first thing which drives, or rather, which makes digital lending possible is obviously the number of data streams that fintechs are able to leverage against you. The second, obviously, is since you now have all of these data streams, you can actually ensure that there is a model, a federated model out there, which consumes these data streams and spits out a working model, which would give them a working idea on how this borrower is going to behave under certain circumstances. This actually even lowers their NPA risk as well. In fact, as far as digital lending is concerned, there are a few very bright ideas as far as lending and reconciliation or even loan servicing are concerned. So there are a lot of fintechs engaged in what is called the POS lending scenario in India. So here's how it goes. So let's say you're a Kirana store and you have, let's say, a credit swiping machine. Let's call it M-Swipe, for instance. Now, these credit swipe networks would always have data for all of the credit card transactions that ever happen at your shop premises. And they are able to take this data and share it with lenders out there, who then use this data to build business models. And they can then offer you, the Kirana store owner, a business loan over an SMS. And again, like I said, the models are built entirely on the data stream of, let's say, credit card transactions. So they would know what kind of transaction that you get and what kind of a transaction or a credit risk they can take against you. So once you get this loan offer, you can accept it. And as soon as you accept it, the money gets transferred to you either through UPI or, let's say, one of your e-wallets as well. The cool thing is how repayments happen. So the modern age fintech doesn't have any vasuli pipe. All of the vasuli happens over every single card swipe. So the next time a customer walks in and does a card swipe against your credit card machine, a part of the transaction goes against the repayment of that loan, which means that the fintech now is also able to save all of the money that they would have otherwise spent in the operations of their loan repossession as well. Now, since these loans are digital and even the repayments are digital, they can actually even combine or even bucket all of these loans together and even get investors to invest in their balance sheets as well, which again means that you can actually repurpose these loans and make them into sellable assets as well. This is something which is already happening in India, and it's not a fantasy which would come true, let's say 3-4 years down the line. It's something which already happens, which means that you have one simple idea of creating and delivering a digital loan, and then you are able to get 3 or even 4 business models out of it directly. The second value proposition that I really love is integrated financial management. So if you are, again, a retail customer or even a wholesale customer, one thing which would really bug you out is the experience that you would have in dealing with all of these banks or banking relationships that you have. So the good thing about having an API economy in the first place is that, instead of having different interfaces for every single bank, you can now consume all of these APIs under one single standard API and have one single interface which would give you all of the information that you need for all of your banking relationships. Which means that if you have 3 banking relationships with 3 different banks, you can see all of your balances available against each in a single application by connecting to their APIs. That's A, obviously. You can do something similar with all of your invoices, expenses, ERPs as well, which means instead of having to rely on different ERPs, different cloud suites, you can now just take all of these APIs, connect them into a single user-facing interface, and get all of this data in a single pane of glass. This actually is pretty important because this directly gives the financial managers of the company a lot of leverage on their finances because they don't have to manage multiple interfaces. They don't have to jump through hoops in order to get the actual information. They have all of this information at their fingertips, and so they can actually make smarter decisions. Now, with the coming age of edge computing as well, you can even afford to run decentish analytics on your invoicing or payments forecasts as well. Which means that if you were an SME in the past, let's say 6-8 odd years, something that you would not be able to do would be to run forecasts. That's something which is now entirely possible. Which means that as an SME, you now have complete control over your finances, and you can actually predict to a high degree of fidelity the amount of money that you are going to get, and you can actually manage your working capital effectively as well. So we've actually built a couple of solutions on this front as well. One of them was obviously with Yes Bank, where we ended up doing supply chain financing for Bajaj, which was a corporate partner of the bank, for their vendor payments. So we did this obviously for the wholesale banking scenario, but it's entirely possible in other scenarios as well. So in their case, it was Bajaj who was trying to automate payments to their vendors by looking at invoices and having smart contracts on when to do vendor payments. So it's just one scenario. You can obviously even have your internal treasury teams defining what the discounted interest rate would be that would get charged on every single invoices that the vendors have against you. So, which again means that, even as a typical corporate or a business, you can now also function like a bank in your own right. So instead of going to a bank, getting limits, you can actually dictate terms to your vendors as well and let your own treasury management teams define the command that they have on their interest rates as well. The final the use case that I have in mind is obviously payments. So payments are pretty big, and they are even bigger in India. And thankfully, we already have probably the best-in-class payment rails against anywhere in the world. So with the advent of UPI, what we actually had was a reference open source framework or even network for payments that anybody could onboard and use its standardized set of APIs to make payments in a P2P fashion without leaking any private or PII linked with your credit cards. An add-on to this is obviously BBPS. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are already using it without knowing its name as well. So BBPS is the Bharat Bill Pay service. It's actually an automated mandate system, which means that you can program your account to pay your invoices and monthly expenses on its own. It's like a digitally signed contract which executes in its own right without you having to bother about it ever. So this is what we feel would happen to payments if they keep improving in years to come. So like I said, PPPS is going to, it already does automate payments for you on a monthly or a quarterly or even an annual basis. UPI makes payments P2P, but what's obviously very centralized here is that there's a single central UPI that you still have to worry about, right? There's still no such concept as an edge compute here. In future, I obviously think that payments are going to be much more federated, where individual account systems would be able to transmit information or even payments information to a wider network of accounting systems as well. This actually is how blockchains operate as well. At a very low fidelity, this actually is how they operate. But what they currently lack is a decent way to show how your double accounting ledger operates and how you would reconcile it against what your non-banking ledgers, like the ones that banks or Zoho have, against you. So we had 3 reference value propositions. Like I said, I also want to get into how you want to end up managing these fintech solutions. So the first thing that I obviously want to take up is the InfoSec. So I think this comes at the forefront of everything. So as managers, the first thing that you would always have to face is, whether the solution that you're building, AI or not, whether it is compliant in the first place. So there are a lot of standards that you have to follow. For example, in our case, we actually do have a tech fin platform which currently operates in Southeast Asia. Now, in our case, there are a few things which are standardized across geographies. For instance, there are authentication and authorization standards which are pretty much internationally accepted. So you actually have to follow OAuth 2 or OIDC standards as far as these are concerned. In fact, even if you're trying to build something which is, let's say, similar to account aggregation framework in India, you would actually have to do something similar here. Digitally signed tokens, managing identities and federating identities on your behalf. Then you have to worry about encryption standards. This goes for the data that you're storing at rest, as well as the data which is in motion. So the data which is getting transmitted from you by the customers, as well as the data that you're storing in your databases. Hosting security, which basically means actually ensuring that your servers, that your virtual machines, that your containers are hosted in a compliant manner. Secure coding guidelines, which means that the code that you're delivering actually has been unit tested or even regression tested to ensure that there are no bugs available. There are data integrity standards, which means that if there are multiple partners interacting on your platform and something goes wrong and one of the systems fail, you actually have data consistency across all of these partner systems. So think of a scenario where you make a card payment and the payment fails at your end, but the money gets debited from your account. It's the worst possible thing. So a secure data integrity standard would essentially ensure that if a transaction succeeds in one place, then it has to always succeed for everybody in that transaction network. And if it fails deterministically for everybody. There can be no 2 ways about it. A technical way, or rather a technical term for that, is a finite state machine. So a finite state machine should only have one of the possible states. It can't have an intermediate state, which means that either the transaction fails for everybody or it succeeds. Besides this, there are a few more problems that you would have to manage. And this is the part where I talk about AI for a bit. The first is obviously the imposter problem. So you can talk about your AI and you can talk about your AI being the best possible AI, but a lot of AI, so-called AI systems that I've seen actually end up being simple if-else loops, or for the most part, they are pretty much statistics wrapped in some kind of a wonderful language. So notwithstanding that, there are still a few problems that you have to always address. The first is obviously that the business models, or rather the the models that your AI gets trained to work on are typically not always bias free, which means that depending on the data that it was fed on, the kind of algorithms that were getting used would always determine the outcome of a specific model that you would get. And these are scenarios where you can always, feel that, would it always be better to rely on an AI for a decision? Can we not have an operator? Because if an AI model is also not bias free, should it not also be, a human who gets to determine what happens? And this argument actually gets stronger because, again, a lot of the AI models that get built are built in a black box fashion. So pretty much everything that you build using neural nets or perceptrons today are essentially black box models, which means there's no way for the AI to also explain how they arrived at a conclusion. And then, it actually becomes harder for the statisticians in a company to be able to explain why they've made a decision based on AI. Finally, there's also this problem of, the kind of data that you should be using. Should you be using real actual user PII data, or should you be generating synthetic data, which would generate a lower level of fidelity in the business models that you end up building, but would always secure the information of the end user? There's this final problem as well, which is what kind of data do you actually have in your company? So we deal with a lot of data with banks and insurance companies as well. And this is what happens pretty much every single time. So while there's a lot of data out there, the actual data which is discoverable is a very tiny sliver of it. And once you've done away with it, kati chati kar diya and chota sa kar diya, what you end up with is something which is not even trainable anymore. So the question then is, how do you maintain your data lakes? How do you ensure that the data that you have is actually understandable, documented, and usable as well? Having talked about this, I'm going to quickly jump into the last portion of my talk, which is the emerging trends that I see in managing fintechs. So I've talked a lot about clouds and I've talked a lot about AI. What obviously is going to be the next iteration of the industry is definitely not industry 4.0, is probably going to be 5.0 as well. Then there's a very simple reason for that. The cloud that we see today is all standardized and centralized. So you go to a single AWS, you get your compute, you pay for it, and that's the end of the story. The end user has no say over it. They have no sovereignty over the data as well. And there's no way for them to say whether you have actually followed secure data storage policies or not. And because of this, I see that serverless systems are definitely going to pick up, and there's going to be a lot of focus on self-sovereignty of data, which means that client data would end up being managed by systems which might end up being air-gapped as well. And so in enterprise 4.0 or much rather 5.0, what you would have is a network of self-sovereign devices which would be able to operate on their own. And instead of a single server managing data and models and ensuring privacy and secrecy, all of these edge compute devices would be powerful enough to build models of their own and contribute to central repositories and make more powerful models as well. Which means that every single component of this network, whether it's mobile devices, IoT sensors, central servers, your lamps for that matter, all of these would contribute to a much larger data source, all the while ensuring that you only give access to data that you are comfortable giving, which means that the ownership of the data would move away from central warehouses like Google or Facebook or AWS, and it would end up moving more towards the customer themselves. The good thing is we already have the basis for this in the blockchain. So the blockchain, which is obviously my favorite topic, has already set the benchmarks in building the global computer. And the way to do this is through smart contracts. So these are small pieces of code which run on every single node on a blockchain network, which means that even if one node is down for some reason, the piece of that code would always be available to the network and it would be able to execute without any central orchestrating service. So think about an AI operating at the same level, where instead of one single Google or Facebook being able to decide your recommendations, you would actually have a wider network of decentralized operators who would all contribute to these results. Again, all the while ensuring that there is no tamper-proofness, there's no tampering of the data ever. There are a few fintechs of the future which can always come up. There's obviously the secured cloud wallets, which means that identity would definitely become a major fintech offering in a decentralized future world. There's always DAO. So DAOs would be decentralized autonomous organizations. So think of it as a non-human operator which would be able to make decisions on its own, because of rules which would be pre-programmed into smart contracts. So these would be able to use digital contracts and digital signatures to transact on your behalf without any kind of intervention whatsoever. So you also have decentralized trade contracts, which means that people would be able to, or even entities would be able to transact assets among each other, whether they are energy tokens, digital identities, all on their own, all the while ensuring that all the data consistency requirements that we had earlier are always met. And finally, you have DeFi. DeFi has already been picking up. A good example is Aave, which is one of the protocols that I've been using of late. So it's a classical scenario of the commons coming in to govern themselves. So in Aave, you essentially have a pool of contributors to a loan pool, and they keep pooling in money to the liquidity pool, and the lending interest rates depend on the liquidity level of the pool as well. So which means that the higher the liquidity level, the lower the interest rates, and vice versa. And as soon as repayments come in, the liquidity levels go up and the interest rates go down as well. So these are all self-governing, self-defined smart contracts which can operate as full-blown organizations as well. And basis the scenarios that I mentioned and the infrastructure that I mentioned that I see, what we would have eventually in the future is multiple organizations, devices, personas communicating to each other in a trustless fashion without intermediaries. Obviously, it depends a lot on the regulatory requirements as well, but the technology is definitely there. And as managers, your role then should be to define the secure standards under which you would make these humanless organizations operate. That's it for me. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanchit. I would now like to introduce to you Mr. Rishikesh. Mr. Rishikesh is a leader in digital transformation with a profound understanding of business problems with the correct implementation of technology strategies. He has led digital channels for banks in his previous roles and have experience in digital transformation spaces where he has mentored global clients across the banking sector on their strategic journeys in digital transformation. He is passionate about providing immersive customer experience using emerging technologies and have worked actively with Fintech startup ecosystem to conceptualize business IT solutions that combine digital and physical technologies. He has been speaker, panelist, and a jury member for several digital conferences in India. Mr. Rishikesh is a senior IT professional and a banking and financial services leader with over 20 years of industry experience. He's currently leading AI-led ops transformation platform at HSBC Technology. Mr. Rishikesh carries a rich experience where he has led digital channels for Barclays Bank, South Africa, as well as led digital consultancy of Europe and Africa as a part of LTI in addition to his earlier stint with several BFSI institutes in US. During his tenure in 2015-17, he, along with his 3 colleagues, conceptualized and set up Open Innovation Center for Barclays in India. Widely known as RISE Mumbai, this center attracted early attention of internal and external stakeholders, including visits by 2 UK cabinet ministers. He and his team gained significant experience in working with startups as part of large corporate structure. Mr. Rishikesh has been involved with various other innovation initiatives, including innovation boot camp, startup accelerators, and few India level hackathons, including his strong leadership to manage India's largest BF hackathon in November 2015. Mr. Rishikesh is a passionate about providing practical knowledge and has been visiting to several colleges to address the students and professionals. He also loves to share his knowledge on digital transformation, data, AI, UX design, Google, SRE, EOPS, project program management, practical aspects. I welcome you, Mr. Rishikesh. Now I would request Mr. Rishikesh to kindly address the participants.
Thank you so much, Dr. Priya, and thanks the entire team of DR Patil for inviting me. Hope I'm audible and not too loud. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Sanjit, thanks for the phenomenal session. As you said, I also completed the PPT just in time, and that's basically engineering blood, right? Where you do it just before the exam. I don't treat this as an exam, but it's going to be a more conversation. Of course, my slides may not be as polished as you, but we'll try. So before we start, right, there's a couple of things I want to talk about, and I like what Dr. Gopal alluded to. First of all, thank you, Dr. Gopal, for the opportunity and welcoming us so nicely. I really look forward to opening up the colleges, coming there physically and speaking to the students, because the most important part when you take session is the feedback, right? As I speak, most of you will be focused, curious to looking at your screens. Some of you on your WhatsApp, and I hope not, but some of you could be yawning, right? But think about it, these data points are not with me. And that's where I do not have intelligence to tweak my session, whether should I alter, should I wrap up, should I increase the energy, should I crack the better jokes? I don't have that. And I think these are the typical problems in AI that we face day-to-day basis. Don't mind, feel free to look at the WhatsApp. It's okay, because we cannot get the feedback on the webinar. But what we're going to do is, of course, the earlier session was very good, very focused on the technology bit. I'm going to cover slightly a story aspects and the overall manager aspects, because the way I look at all of you, either the current MBA students or the aspiring MBA students, you will most likely get into a role of either a project management, product management, be it running your own venture at startup or working for fintech, or probably for large organization, right? And as some of you earlier said, the AI becomes more of a like a life skill nowadays and going forward, right? I have been in industry for 20 plus years. What I've seen is 20 years back, people who did not know computers or probably had a resistance to learn computer in some large banks in India as well as in US, kind of had to let go of their roles, or probably their roles got transformed to somebody who knew the computers. And a similar story is going to unfold for the person who doesn't understand the data, AI, and all that aspect. Yeah. And as a manager, if you're running that program, or if you're running these kind of programs, looking at this, understanding the AI, it's going to be really, really critical. Yeah. As Dr. Gopal said, we really don't need to understand the coding bits of it, but the high level understanding as well as the current technology trends is going to be the key aspect of it. Now, now, what do we want to look at it is, so we will look at a couple of aspects. One is the impact of AI on the project management role itself. Second, we'll touch upon, and I will not claim that I have a huge experience of running AI projects, but I have been a consultant for a couple of rather Europe and Africa for the data transformation. So I've seen the projects. And for last 18 months, I have been running the AI platform development and understand the challenges primarily from the working for the large organizations. So these views are completely personal. I'm not really representing any organization, just wanted to put that on the table. But this is all what I've gathered. Of course, the real life story of developing the AI platform, I will kind of try and interlink during the session itself. Yeah. Before I move on, Dr. Gopal would definitely love to collaborate and kind of design the courses, because I really feel getting the practical aspect during the course is very, very important. We would love to, and I definitely see a lot of merit in that. We are already working with some of the other management institutes where we can put in the corporate hat and then the education hat, combine that, and kind of give the more real life experience to the students. But definitely worth looking at. All right, so moving on. So all of you, what do you think are the typical things that you as a project manager do, right? So if you look at it, you probably will do a communication, reporting, scheduling, risk management, task management, resource tracking, and decision making, isn't it? Yeah. But if you look at it, there are already tools of doing that and rather much faster and in a better way. And of course, as a human, you might get tired. The tools will probably work for 24/7 and then kind of do these jobs very effectively. A lot of these tools are coming up with AI-backed power, where it's basically a lot of this decision making is happening automatically. The data is kind of leveraged very effectively to take the resource decisions and the resource optimization. Even Gartner says 80% of the work that today's project management will probably get eliminated by 2030, right? Where does that leave for the project managers? What do you do? Yeah, sounds scary, right? Some of you are entering the B school and say, okay, your role is getting eliminated. So if you really read it through thoroughly, it's not the role, it's the tasks that you used to do are getting eliminated. What it means is the role is going to get transformed into something else. Yeah, it's basically all the monotonous work, or the work that you can give it to the tools. It's going to be led by tool, and there is a higher level task which probably AI will not solve at this moment. That skill will have to be with you, right? How do you do that? So if you look at it, in my view, project management is both art and science. So above the sea level, you see all the science part, that's definitely doable by the tool. The reason I kept risk on the border is because there are tools to kind of derive the scenarios and kind of assess the risk, because there will be a tool which will just derive the risk quotient for your project, your program, or your product development that you're running, and kind of give you feedback on what are the top risks, what are the lower risks, and how do you mitigate that, right? So that's where the everything below the sea level that you see on the screen, whereas these are all softer aspect of your personality, your personal leadership, the creative problem solving, knowing the people, understanding their emotional quotients. That's the art of your leadership, and I think that's something you'll have to develop on your own, and of course with some guidance and mentoring. But how does the tool part and the AI tools come in picture? It's basically, to be very effective manager, you need to learn to use these tools effectively. Okay, so the more you effectively use these tools, what you're going to be doing is you probably are kind of sharpening your swords and put a lot of ammunition, which is going to free up your time to focus on the higher level skills. The way I see a project management getting transformed in future is going to be more from reactive to proactive. Because think about it, if the tools are giving you a lot of the business insight, the risk management, which is where the tool is running all the scenarios and giving you output, the human capital optimization. In the current world, the project manager is sitting and understanding who is loaded, who is not, how do I use the human resources properly. But now going forward, this is just a one button click and it will optimize your human optimization, right? Even it will tell you who is kind of stressed out because of the work and so on and so forth. So everything is doable by the tool. So probably will do all that and kind of use the tool effectively to manage your show. All your, in fact, reporting, status reporting, communication, everything can be managed with the tool. And I think that is the way to go. Yeah. So if you divide the project management role into in US, it's a pretty common term called project coordinator, who kind of does all these lower level tasks, and there's a project manager, right? So with the tools coming in picture, now what's going to happen is you will have a separation of this project coordinator and project manager role, where the coordinator role will be completely given to the tools, and you will do a real project manager role, right? And I think if you're doing the real project manager role, knowing things of your project and what it is impacting it's going to be very, very critical. So apart from this role, I'm happy to take the question. Of course, if there's a chat, feel free to post the questions. Yeah. Apart from this, what else is changing? Of course, the nature of the project. If you look at in the current world, what is happening is you have your basic website development or in mobile app development. These are standard projects that you run, right? Where you have a design, you know the technology, you probably put some developers, run through some iterations, kind of develop the project, test it, show it to client, and put it live. So it's very straightforward and kind of established way of it, because more or less technology is stable, more or less you know what you're building. But in the AI projects, this is a very basic life cycle, and of course, I might be oversimplifying it. We're just trying to keep it easy for your understanding. Of course, we can definitely double click on each of this and probably dig deeper. But just for this 20 minutes, I'm keeping it very simple. Right? So the basic life cycle is problem scoping, understanding the what exactly is the problem. And I think Sanjeev very well alluded to fact saying everybody calls it we are doing AI. And if you go to large corporates, probably every alternate person is working on AI ML, and it eventually could mean using the Excel PO to kind of take some decisions, and people will call it AI ML. So that's not really the using the AI effectively, right? It's about finding what problem I want to solve, and is the AI suitable for it? Is the basic part of your project journey. Yeah. Secondly, the data acquisition. For example, whatever the problem that you're trying to solve, what is the relevant data? The first of all, do you have the data available? And then how do I acquire that? How latest is the data, right? That's the important aspect. Of course, then the data exploration, you find the meaning, the correlations in it. You do a labeling, you kind of understand what is the impact of which, and then so on and so forth. And then you create into the models. And that's where you probably choose the right algorithm. You do the training runs, you evaluate and go through multiple iterations of a development. So that's the cycle. Yeah, that's the AI project basic life cycle. Now, what is the difference, right? So it sounds very, very simple. So what are the challenges? If you look at the challenges, it's what can go wrong is absolutely everything will go wrong, right? So if you look at it, as I said, the identification of suitable problem to solve is a very, very important part, because a lot of time, if you choose a problem that cannot be solved with the current set of AI, and the reason I'm emphasizing on current is because the technology is changing so rapidly. What is not possible today, probably in a year down the line, we might have a solution for that. Yeah. So that's very important. That are you solving the right problem, and is it suitable for AI? Yeah. And the problem cannot be as vague as saying, oh, you know what, I want to improve the business revenue, right? That's like very vague problem to solve, and putting the whole project to failure, right? So it's very important as a manager for you to narrow it down on what you are really trying to solve and what is the outcome. Okay. And of course, looking at the timelines, what is the expected duration that you probably can go through? The reason is, since this is an iterative effort, you will have to always understand what's going to be the timeline. Yeah? The second part is availability of talent. The way I said, since the technology is changing very often, the true engineers who can really work on the model creation or using the model or doing the right Python coding, as well as people who can do a real data scientist job, is very rare. And of course, what is happening is there are always everybody's resume will have some kind of AI or ML written, but finding that right talent, retaining it, putting them to the best use is going to be the challenge for you as a manager. Third, we talked about it, the availability of data. And when it comes to large organization, we do, so if it is a bank, we do have a mandate to retain 7 years of data, typically almost in all geographies. But the quality of data that we retain, right, is always a challenge. So for example, I'll give you an example of one of the data set that I was looking at, where people say all the incidents or the outages that happened, people solve the problems, and the root cause that was written was solved or closed or okay, right? Think about it. If I'm doing any analysis on top of it, saying why this issue happened or how many such issues have happened, what was the root cause? What I get out of it is okay, solved, and closed, right? So that kind of a quality issue exists in the data, because we really not looked at that data. Yeah. And availability of data, the other part is the data might be stored. Do you have the access to it? Is this going to be a daily feed? Based on the problem you're solving, right? Do you need a real-time data, or probably month-old data is fine, or a weekly feed or a daily feed, right? All that kind of a decisioning is going to be part of your role. Yeah. The other part is lack of SME. Now, even if you get access to data, let's assume that the quality of data is good. you need someone who understands the data, and this changes per organization, because what happens is every organization will have a different way of looking at that data, different way of storing that data. The correlation of each field to the other is different, and then you really need somebody who understands that, right? At least, so it's based on the domain base. Either if it's a even if it's a finance, probably it's a very high level term saying if it's investment banking versus the retail banking versus the wholesale banking, or if it's let's say retail sector, it's completely different story. So you need a data SME who can understand the data, make sense of it, and probably draw a correlation which can be fed to the rest of the phases of AI development. The iterative nature of AI projects. So why this is a challenge? The reason is when it comes to large organization, if it is a small, let's say if you're doing your own on your personal laptop doing things, you probably will deploy it like 100 times in a day, right? And it doesn't matter. When it comes to large organization, especially banks and all, there are lots of checks and balances, lots of controls. So even to put a tiny thing in production, you have to go through number of approvals and number of control gates and so on and so forth. So when it comes to AI projects, considering it's iterative, you don't know if it's going to come out good or the accurate, you will get a desired results, right? You probably will go through multiple iteration. And this multiple iteration, going through these multiple control gates, the compliance checks, always causes issue. The testing challenge, of course, it's based on the data. First of all, do you have the large data available to do your data, the training of models? Right? That's one. And the spinach, I think the analogy was amazing. So that's one. And now for the testing, do you use the real data or do you use the synthetic data? Now, how does it matter? Think about it. If you are doing something for a retail customer, as a customer, would you like your data to be used for testing? Can I look at your borrowing history or credit scores and everything and use that for my testing, right? Those are the challenges that every organization face. And that's a very tricky bit. So every time you're starting a project, you probably will have to think about how am I going to do testing? Is it going to be automated? Do I have a tool to kind of recreate the data? And will it be the data that I want, right? So all these things are important. Now the explainability is a very, very important bit. And I have faced this personally also, because you might create something, your platform is kind of predicting things that's going to happen. And I'm sorry, because of the NDA, I may not be able to share a lot of details on the call, but everything that we are predicting, everything that we are recommending, the user will always ask, how did you arrive at it? Yeah. A lot of these deep learning algorithms is kind of a black box for us. It's very difficult to explain something, right? It's the way your human brain works, right? You kind of had some thought process, you kind of arrived at some decision. Then you probably, a post facto, you probably will put some kind of a reasoning. But for AI model, it's very difficult. And that kind of reduces your uptick and then the usage of the product or a platform that you're doing. Because if you're not able to explain, naturally the trust factor on the new platform comes down, right? That's one part. Second part is users or the real customers, let's say within the organization, are not used to something like this where the future can be predicted, right? And then that's an education bit that everyone will have to go through, saying, oh, it's through the tool, it's possible to maybe predict who will default, who will probably get into fraud, and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's the explainability challenge that you will always get it. Last few bits, the compliance challenges with data and models. So there are a couple of things. Data, I'm sure everybody is aware of the GDPR and data privacy rules and stuff like that. So every time the data is crossing the geographical boundaries of boundaries, there's always a lot of data checks. Can this data go? I'm sure you must have recently looked at the India's news also, where WhatsApp is not allowed to send data out and it has to be stored in India and all that. So a lot of these data challenges. So where the data is generated, where are you processing it, right? Can you transfer the data from there? So all these are challenges, and especially if it comes to bank, there are way too many compliances that you deal with, and you have to be really conscious about if you're running a program. Because think about it, if your data access is not there, your project completely is halted, right? The other part is the models. There are a lot of model risks that you have to look at it. The reason is, how is this model working? Is this really coded? Are there any biases? Because think about it. I think we had recently a case somewhere in Europe where certain race were getting benefit of their credit decisions versus the other, right? And think about it. It's maybe because the model was not coded correctly or the not used correctly, or the inherent data itself has those patterns, right? And the model was just blindly getting trained on that. But what happens to this is when the output of this model come out and it is productionized, the reputation of a bank or a particular institute, it has a stake, because then it comes as the particular bank or particular organization is doing this bias, right? Where it be ethnicity or a race or a gender. And these are very, very critical issues to look at when you're running the AI project. And again, it depends on what kind of use case you're solving. Is it going to be externally facing? Is it going to impact the customer? Is it going to be the reputation at risk? All these things you have to look at. Ethics in AI implementation is again similar. You'll have to always be very conscious about the bias. Loosely interpreted AI ML knowledge. I think this is probably, you'll not find this in any of the documentation, but this is a practical experience where what happens is everybody will kind of look at it as an AI ML as a silver bullet, and they'll probably try and solve the problem. Even what will be cooked for your dinner, right? People will say, okay, use AI and do that. It doesn't work that. If your AI and ML is as good as your data, if your data is not good, no good algorithm or no logic will probably bring you the good results. But what happens is, as a manager, you're always dealing with your teams, your customers, as well as your senior management. So it's very important that your senior management is educated on the art of possible, as well as what is feasible and what is not feasible, right? Because then otherwise you are setting the whole team for the failure. So with that, I know in interest of time, I will stop, and I will be happy to take the questions. Yeah. Over to you, Sapna. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Rishikesh. Mr. Nimish is the founder and CEO Metric is one nation's. Mr. Nimish has worked machine learning, cognitive services, and artificial intelligence. He has worked on products involving natural language processing, search, gesture recognition, and computer vision. Before founding Metric, Nimish set up and led the research at the Center for Emerging Market Solutions at the Indian School of Business. His cell received a research grant of USD 2M to develop innovative technology and financial interventions to catalyze the market for skill development and employment in India. Mr. Nimish has consulted various organizations like World Bank and National Skill Development Corporation. He was instrumental in setting up credit and default guarantee fund market in India. A credit guarantee fund scheme for skill development was approved by Union Cabinet in 2012-13. Mr. Nimish has started his career as a management consultant with Deloitte in India. He advised large corporations and technology and impact assessment for multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects in schemes. Mr. Nimish is an MBA from a reputed business school, and he has also completed his Master in Commerce and Bachelor's from Mumbai University. I welcome you, Mr. Nimish. I would request Mr. Nimish to kindly address the participants.
Firstly, just to check, can you hear me clearly? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you so much for the invitation. We've had such distinguished speakers speaking before me. So a little bit of pressure in terms of trying to, add to what, breadth of information that has already been shared by the panel. I'll just share my screen and take you through a few quick slides, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. I'll largely talk about, what the role and what should be the mindset when we're looking at analytics projects and how we approach them. So a quick, this thing that, the entire automation of power, where the assembly line came in, and immediately the productivity went up significantly. And then the big shift, where automated manufacturing, where you have all these German machines making cars through robotics. And this has been a 20-year-old phenomena. This is not very, very recent, right? Similar, what happened in manufacturing, now a similar approach is taking place in services also. So especially the back-end processing, mid-office processing, where you had a large army of humans who were working manually to do a particular task. Now they are extremely productive tools to do the same. But what we are seeing today is, like in the manufacturing revolution, people got replaced after a bit. The fear in the industry or the skilling requirement is that what will happen when, instead of a typewriter, when we upgraded to computers, but what if computers start replacing humans themselves, right? And how do we gear up as professionals, as management graduates for that kind of a scenario in the industry? So the idea is that, you had automation of labor and power, bringing you steam engines and electricity, information processing, which brought you computers and the internet. And now the idea of decision making is getting automated through artificial intelligence and cloud. So that's where the entire focus needs to get in. This is an old dated slide. If you look at, April 2017, earlier you had all these companies which would manufacture hardware, oil, finance, in the cars, in your top most valuable companies. But now if you look at it, the entire market cap has converted from, to tech companies. And 2021, I think we are seeing the similar change happening in India, where you had large corporations, being present for the last 50 to 100 years, and you have startups which are 10-year-old, crossing them in terms of market capitalization within a decade. So there are some of these, funny cartoons about analytics and professionals, So most people who get into analytics jobs within organizations, they miss the idea that analytics or data is just a tool, and the focus has to be on business and solving problems. My experience with working on with some of the largest banks and organizations has been, when a business user comes and asks that, can you help me with my analytics? Most analytics teams will be too busy trying to perfect the analytics infrastructure, or IT team will be trying to bring in a very shiny tool, or trying to streamline processes. And after a year-long activity, the business user still remains at 0.0. And that's where, you lose sponsorship from the business team for your projects, and you lose interest. And eventually most projects then end up failing because of that. Then the next aspect is governance, right? And especially in the financial services domain, data security is such a huge issue that you will have a situation where you build out a data infrastructure and then will not let anybody access that data, right? So unless you have the business user in mind and focus on making sure that they'll get access to data and build your systems and governance accordingly, what ends up happening is you build out everything, and then you have gatekeepers who will not let any successful activity which can happen quickly. And the last aspect is hubris, right? Once you get your certification that you're a big data engineer, people should not forget they still need to first solve the problem, and solve the problem with the simplest tool available at their disposal. Just because you can run a big machine learning model doesn't mean you have to run it, right? And similarly, you have a lot of professionals who join, and I do thousands of CVs come in for job applications to us. Right now business analytics is hot. To just give you an anecdotal evidence, a business analyst position, within a day we have around 700 applications which have come in, and we'll be selecting around 2 to 3 people. What differentiates the people who get selected from others is that those people focus on solving business problems, and they are not focused on, I will not touch work unless I have to only build models, or I will work only on large data. The people who will shine is the people who will focus on how can they deliver value and justify what is being paid to them in salary within the organization. So the idea is that, what organizations are demanding is that, can we get the ease of what Google delivers? Can we get that kind of ease in terms of how we access our own data, right? So if you want the world's information, you have them at the fingertips. But most organizations will still struggle to figure out which are my top performing sales agents or which are my top performing products in West Bengal. And that's not sustainable. And hence, when you're looking at as a management graduate, right, we have to learn tools and figure out where we want to be in a data team, right? The first aspect is if you're a business user, Excel spreadsheet is still one of the best tools available in the market, right? And it made Bill Gates the richest man in the world. So there, when you have data volumes which is low to moderate, and a business user wants high independence, we recommend most people to be really good at spreadsheets, and you'll be amazed at how many people are still extremely, low tech even with spreadsheets, and spreadsheets can do wonderful stuff. Then the second aspect is basically if you want to get into reporting and MIS, then you need to learn the reporting tools. And somewhere in between is these visualization tools like Tableau, ClickView, Power BI, which have done a fantastic job over a period of time, where the IT team or the reporting team will put up visualization dashboards and make it available to the business team. And if they need something more, then they'll move to the spreadsheets. But now, because of digitization, the data volumes are increasing, and these three categories of tools are not doing justice. And hence, this entire big data tools and technologies, learning Python, R, and SQL has come in. However, very few people are able to learn these skill sets and still be business savvy at the same time, and that's where the struggle for most organizations is. How do we get talent which is technical in nature and still understands business domain? So that's where tools like Rockmetric and others, they're trying to bridge the gap to make sure that people who are extremely business savvy and understand the domain really well, can they analyze large data sets without having to learn highly technical skill sets. Now, these are the layers of analytics. The first one that most people in an organization will need is the visualization layer, where you create pre-built dashboards and reports and you answer what has happened. Then is the insights layer, where we do manual analysis, or you give augmented insights. How did something happen? Where you deep dive and try and understand issues. The third is the exploration layer, where the data becomes much larger and you want to go granular and try and find out what is the root cause analysis, which customer, which ticket, or which a field force agent is not meeting the target. And the last one is advanced analytics, where we are looking at ML models and others. However, most analytics professionals are only focused on the ML models without trying to realize that they can deliver so much value with the first three. And that will differentiate others. From a cricketing analogy, since you just finished IPL, if you need to chase 140, you don't need somebody who will keep hitting sixes all the time, right? And if you want to make a career there, there's a huge requirement for professionals who will play and focus on efficiency and reliability and keeping things simple over people who will overcomplicate things with models which are not required. So what is the broad architecture, of how do you architect an intelligence layer within an organization, right? So it starts with your infrastructure layer, where the IT teams have a lot of difficulties in terms of managing, the storage, the computing, the databases and platform services. But luckily with cloud, all these things are easily available and manageable. And so I recommend most of my business analysts, to learn at least SQL and have basic understanding of infrastructure, so that they don't give recommendations which are not implemented. Then the next aspect, the data, which is the most difficult and extremely thankless job for the IT as well as the data teams. No amount of effort that is put in here, it's a completely thankless job and the most difficult aspect. And this is where I think 70-80% of the effort goes in, before building out a model. So ensuring that you collect data correctly, you prepare data well, you enrich the data and make sure that the data gets unified as per the requirement. And the most critical aspect is available to use. And then models, I think Sanchit also mentioned, you can do a lot of work with basic rule-based models or statistics. And we shouldn't be ashamed to solve problems with these two tools if it can be done. You shouldn't complicate matters. And whenever you fail, that's where you need machine learning. And if you have complicated tasks, you need cognitive services. And you then have interfaces, like when you have machine executing these aspects, you need to interact with the customer to communicate and take their feedback, because without that loop, none of the systems will work well. So your website, apps, APIs, chat messaging or speech or vision interfaces are available. Last few slides is that from a consumer perspective, you have a business leader and all the operators, your analysts and IT MIS, and the need for all four stakeholders are very different and dynamic. And their level of insight could, be from a report to a dashboard to an alert or notification. You may need spreadsheet extracts or SQL reports or, performance reviews, presentations or customer segmentation. And all these different needs also require different tool sets and skill sets here. So it is very important if management graduates can figure out, what is it that their strengths are, and then focus. It'll be much better for them to, get really high paying jobs and get good career growth with business leaders really valuing their delivery within the organization. Last is some of the use cases, right? So there are a whole host of use cases. These are a little more macro. So, from risk management and investigation to branch monitoring, field force productivity, support and service analytics. So even from a domain perspective, vast areas where you can focus. And when you're looking for jobs, if somebody is competing with 60 other participants for a, customer success kind of a role in an insurance company, you can really prepare well for support and service analytics or cross-sell and really shine in the interview process, right? So you should focus on areas which interest you and just go a little bit deep rather than, just going in as a blank slate saying that, can give me whatever you want, I can do everything. Because interest really matters in these domains because the industry is moving so quickly. You really need people who are extremely curious and can learn really fast. And that's one of the biggest character traits that people look for when they're hiring talent in this domain. So last, I'll just showcase one video to show the kind of innovation that people are coming out with and how we can use some of these tools to actually transform the way we run business. This is a Microsoft video. I'll just showcase the video.
I'm Saqib Sheikh. I lost my sight when I was 7. And shortly after that, I went to a school for the blind. And that's where I was introduced to talking computers. And that really opened up a whole new world of opportunities. I joined Microsoft 10 years ago as a software engineer. I love making things which improve people's lives. And one of the things I've always dreamt of since I was at university was this idea of something that could tell you at any moment what's going on around you.
I think it's a man jumping in the air doing a trick on a skateboard.
I teamed up with like-minded engineers to make an app which lets you know who and what is around you. It's based on top of the Microsoft Intelligence APIs, which makes it so much easier to make this kind of thing. The app runs on smartphones, but also on the Pivot Head smart glasses. When you're talking to a bigger group, sometimes you can talk and there's no response and you think, is everyone listening really well or are they half asleep? And you never know.
I see two faces, 40-year-old man with a beard looking surprised, 20-year-old woman looking happy.
The app can describe the general age and gender of the people around me and what their emotions are, which is incredible. One of the things that's most useful about the app is the ability to read out text.
Hello, good afternoon. There's a menu.
I can use the app on the phone to take a picture of the menu. And it's going to guide me on how to take that correct photo.
Move camera to the bottom right and away from the document.
And then it'll recognize the text. Read me the headings.
I see appetizers, salads, paninis, pizzas, pastas.
Years ago, this was science fiction. I never thought it would be something that you could actually do. But artificial intelligence is improving at an ever faster rate. And I'm really excited to see where we can take this. as engineers, we're always standing on the shoulders of giants, building on top of what went before. And in this case, we've taken years of research from Microsoft Research to pull this off.
I think it's a young girl throwing an orange frisbee in the park.
For me, it's about taking that far-off dream and building it one step at a time. I think this is just the beginning.
So just to summarize, in terms of technology, this is a fascinating time. And, all of us who are building products right now feel like kids in a candy store. But as professionals, I think the focus will have to be how do you use these tech and build something useful, simple and elegant so that things can scale and end customers can really derive value from it. And with that, I will end my talk. Happy to take questions, if any.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nimish. I would now like to introduce to you Mr. Nirav Modi, our own alumni. He's currently a business consultant and he's heading strategic finance function of cybersecurity unit in TCS. He's also into talking about TCS. He's designing financial and commercial model that are submitted to customers for TCS services. I welcome you, Mr. Nirav Modi. I would request Mr. Nirav Modi to kindly address the participants.
Nirav, you're on mute.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much. So sorry to be on mute, like it's being like a deja vu for me. Like every time on a call, I have to say I speak something and someone prompts, Nirav, you might be talking on mute. So it's a deja vu for me. So yes, coming back to where I started. So I was part of the third batch of DY Patil Management Institute. I passed out in 2008, got campus placed into Hexaware Technologies as a credit derivative analyst. I worked there for around 2.5 years, and since 2010, I am with Tata Consultancy Services, TCS. Now, we had a very insightful sessions by the three speakers that we had. Now, my basic role, taking fintech slightly ahead of what the speakers talked about, what my role into my organization is to price the services and products basically out of the cyber security arm of TCS. So when we talk about cyber security, it comes with SOC, IAM, that is identity and access management, cloud security, mobile security, and other apps that help organizations across the globe keeping their data, their clients' data, their infrastructure secured from different type of malware attacks, cyber attacks, hacks, and all those things. So mostly my role is into finance, where I price the solutions that are requested by the customers. So our technical team, our technical experts will design a solution around the problem that customer has come to us for consulting. I would go ahead, look at that solution, see whether it is due diligent, and then I would price it based on the different market intelligence as to the value for that service for the customer as well as for TCS. So if the customer is dear to us, where we want our footprints to be felt, like some geographies that we haven't explored, then our pricing model would be different. Whereas where it's a mature geography and customer has more value to it then our pricing model would be different. So my basic role is to price deals for TCS that goes out to the customers. Thank you. Over to you, Sapna. happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Neerab. We shall begin with the question answer session now. So I would request Dr. Priya to kindly take it up.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sapna. May I request Sahil? Sahil Rizvi?
Good evening, everyone. So my question for the speakers is, as we know that machines basically are learning more and more and adapting to the new technologies. So I would like to ask you that using AI on such a big magnitude can easily replace humans over time. And stating this threat on humans, what shall we do to make this as an opportunity to be more useful to the organization and give away, not give away our job basically?
I think Rishikesh sir will answer this question.
Okay, sure. I will attempt that. It's a good question, and I know a lot of talks. So every time a technology comes, right, the typical discussion happens. In fact, I remember 5 years back, I attended a panel where it said, "Oh, is a fintech threat to bank? Will the bank gets replaced by fintech?" So it's basically just a media hype that's created, is what I feel. Okay, are you threatened? Should you be threatened by the AI, or should you be? I think it's going by the classic book, right? Who moved my cheese? You have to always worry about who's moving your cheese, right? You have to always look at saying, "Oh, okay, what is the new thing I need to learn? How do I make the most of the current tool, and then move on?" So even in the current phase, a lot of the operation job, it's kind of getting automated. If you look at it, the rise of RPA and intelligent automation, things are getting automated. So are the people losing job? They're not. Actually, their functional expertise are getting utilized into something more meaningful, right? If people who choose not to adapt to new learnings, probably get transform their role into new, definitely will have challenge. But I don't think this will have a problem on the jobs as such, having more technology. It's basically what it means is we all will do more meaningful jobs and than what we are doing right now.
Sanchit sir, you want to add something to it?
I actually have a contrarian view here. So technology does change things for the better for a small set of people, and a very large majority are left to lurch in the dirges, which basically means that there are a lot of jobs which are out there today which would become redundant and meaningless in the future. A simple example is that of a computer. I'm pretty sure we all know that there actually used to be a job of a computer. These used to be human people, right? So a human operator would act, and not just computer. There used to be a computer. There used to be a compiler as well. So the compiler, which is right now a programmable or rather a programmatic component of a computer, used to be a human whose only task would be to take all these punch cards which the developers had developed and take them and compile them in a sequence. Now, this is again, so you can look at this as a clerical job. You can look at this as a specialized job. The entire point is that job entirely vanished because it became programmed. And this would actually, again, I don't want to be a naysayer, or a doomsayer here. The point is, AI or any of these technologies are definitely going to bring a lot of disruption everywhere, in jobs as well. So, yeah, the one thing which is always true and which is absolutely right, as Rishikesh said, is who moved my cheese. You as people, you have to look out for what works best for you, because tech will actually ensure that the standards of living will get higher, but it also comes at the cost of widening the chasms between the haves and have-nots. So if you're on the wrong side, it's actually going to be much, much more difficult for you to get across this barrier.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Neha?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening to our esteemed speakers, and I'm really thankful to our faculty members for organizing this webinar for us, which has been so insightful in so many ways. Most of our questions have been solved, and Sahil just asked a very important question that was there in my mind as well. But there's one more question that I want to know about is that the integration of AI and fintech tool has become like a threat to the financial hand.
Nimish sir, would you like to answer this, Nimish sir?
Can you just repeat the question?
Yes, sir. So my question is that the integration of AI and fintech tools, has it become a threat to the financial handlings or will it be in the coming future?
Financial handlings, you are saying, is it?
Yes, sir.
You mean transactions?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, so see, the threat obviously is much larger, right? So earlier, when you would go to a bank, somebody would, earlier, I mean, just 20 years back, somebody will forge a check, for example, or, somebody will, try and take some money out of a bank account, and it could be done at a branch and would get restricted there. It was distributed from that perspective. Now things are centralized, right? So if somebody cracks into your systems, the losses can be significantly huge. But at the same time, you had the PNB scam, where because of lack of digitization, you had scams which was such huge in nature and could actually impact large organizations. So the idea is that, when you move into a technology which is scalable, obviously the risks are also scalable in nature. But with tech, the idea is that you have so many people working towards making sure that everything is secure. So as long as all partners and everyone in the ecosystem is aligned, I think we should be fine. In some cases, things are much more secure than what it used to be earlier. So handling cash, for example, you would take 1 lakh and keep moving around with yourself, would be much more riskier than being able to, transfer 40-50,000 through any of these UPI or this thing. So on balance, it is much safer if everyone is actually making sure that systems are secure.
Thank you so much, sir.
Neerav, would you like to add something? Neerav?
Yeah, so here, yes, there is a risk, as the other speakers said, but the crux here is to evolve at every moment. Where you see an opportunity, where you see a new tech coming in, you have got to evolve with the time. Your skill sets, your competencies should keep on upgrading with the every new technology coming in.
Right, sir. Thank you so much.
We need to update ourselves regularly.
Absolutely.
Now, Musaddiq. Next question, Musaddiq.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. My question is how artificial intelligence and fintech tools can change the future of management of various organizations.
I think Sanchit sir will answer this.
मैं answer कर देता हूँ, even though I know that Nimesh is the best guy for this.
I felt Nimish is the best person to answer.
Yeah, but Nimesh is definitely the best guy to answer this, but I'll give it my shot. So here's the thing. AI, like I said, in one way or the other is definitely getting used, right? So even when you do, let's say, a full text search, okay, it's the smallest thing that you can do, right? Make a full text search. Usme bhi AI hai. It makes your life easier when you are searching for specific things, even though you may not have the exact matching tokens available in your search engine, right? A matter of fact, even as, let's say, a server-side developer, I regularly use Elasticsearch to search through my logs or even search through my business logic as well. And Elasticsearch is a fantastic tool which actually implements machine learning and tokenization to a very large degree, which makes my life as a developer easier because I can now pinpoint actual problems in the code when they happened and trace through every single microservice which failed for a simple transaction. And this is me as a hardcore developer, right? I am using this every day. I don't have to wait for the best possible thing from Google or somebody else to kick in. Elasticsearch is today and now, and I use it every day. That's from me. There are others as well. So there are non-blockchain scenarios as well. So and this I think even the seasoned practitioners would know of. So BPMN has been here for a fairly long time. Obviously now the entire hype is about no code and low code, but BPM is definitely the OG on this. So BPM tooling came in and they standardized how you actually end up drawing all your BPM and diagrams, and then you would have a single BPM and server rules, whatever naam hota hai, and then you would deploy these diagrams and they would actually work. They would link multiple microservices and you would actually be able to execute business logic by just drawing a simple diagram. There's no AI over there. What you are implementing is a machine assisted way of doing things. So for me, these are two very critical things. Searching through logs. As a developer, I use it pretty much every day. The second, obviously, is BPM. And in fact, with the advent of serverless workloads, your BPM actually has become more federated as well. I'm actually getting into more into the tech weeds for now. But for me, I think this is possibly the best scenario of using machine-assisted tooling in business.
I request Nimish sir to share his views.
So Musatik, so let me try and answer this. Anyway, Sanuched has raised expectations. So, like how we used to book train tickets, right? You would go to a ticket counter and you will have somebody who will book tickets for you. So you had what I call this as a human router problem, right? You had a large number of people where people had to go to them and they will go to some others and then meet your needs. With tech, what has happened is that people are able to access information directly. Similarly, in organizations, you had managers whose only job would be to pass on information from juniors to seniors and bring it back, conduct meetings, and forward mails with FYI or, why is it not happening without adding any value. So a lot of people in managerial positions got used to not upgrading themselves, adding value after they had a large team with them managing. With tech, what will happen is because a boss can now manage 10 more people by using Slack or, mails or others because they're getting more productive, these human routers will get redundant, even in a managerial situation, not only unskilled jobs. So, if you're looking at project management, program management, like, Rishikesh only mentioned, I think, about that aspect. We'll have several roles where people are not adding value or making decisions. Wherever you're making decision, thinking creatively, trying to understand how to bring people together, wherever there's a human element available, machines are still far away to reach that aspect. But if you realize you're not using your brains, then you should be really scared.
Thank you. That's a nice way to put it.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I think Neha. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question at this place?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because I have this question from a guy called Ajinkya. I don't know whether he's our student or what.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The question is directed towards Nirav. And he says, and the question is really, I'm finding it very odd to ask this question also, But he says, what made you really be successful, and what are the contribution of the college to make you successful?
Okay, the contribution of the college towards my success is humongous. As I said, I grew both professionally and personally during my tenure with the college. Why I say personally as well is because the change in the personality, the change in the looking, the attitude, the change in the view with which you look at the problems, or the mindset to somehow deep dive and get the solution out is what this college has institutionalized into me. Okay. There are many things. Might be I might be wrong in saying, or I might be very right in saying that only 10% of the books book learning is what I'm applying today. Remaining 90% is what the attitude change, the what you say, the paradigm shift that this college has institutionalized into me has led me to whatever success I have achieved is towards that.
Okay, thanks a lot.
And the idea or the motivation to keep evolving ourselves into new things and upgrading yourself every now and then is what this college has put into me.
Okay, Priya, take over, because I got this question on my WhatsApp, and this guy says he wants to ask this question. I really don't know whether he's our student or he's an outside student or what. But I said,
I hope this helps, but
yeah, thank you so much.
A big thanks.
Yeah. Now, I think, yeah, thank you, sir. Neha?
Yes, ma'am. So I just as Nimesh sir said that focus on areas that interest you. So, sir, I had this question that Sahil, myself, and Musaddiq are students of BBA, currently studying BBA in DY Patil, and we don't have a lot of professional experience in the corporate world. And with AI coming into picture, so what are some areas that we should work on, and how do we work on those areas? Are there a few courses that we should take up, or anything specific, anything that you suggest we should do?
I think Rishikesh sir will answer.
No, I think the question is for Nimesh.
Rishikesh, आप पहले answer दे दो ना, then
we'll have a discussion only, na?
Okay, no, I think I probably did not hear the last part. That's why I said, because she said it's for Nimesh. But do you want to just maybe repeat the last bit?
Yes, sir. So my question was that how do we brush up on our skills, as in learn few courses, or how is it that we will be able to adjust with AI coming into picture, because we have no corporate experience at all. So how do we match up to that level?
Basically, what skills they require to fit in the industry in the current scenario? She want to ask that.
Okay, got it. I think that there's a very simple answer to it is, right. So the problem with, or not a problem, the good part about the current world is there's plenty of resources available, and of course, navigating through that is a critical bit. But I would say, based on where you are right now, right, if you already know a bit of AI, probably then taking up the course either to Coursera, LinkedIn, or whatever, there are a lot of resources, and try and build this knowledge on a maybe a day-to-day basis, right? Just to incrementally something. There are various courses which will allow you to kind of play with it. There will be a courses on manager aspect, the business analysis part of it, data science part of it. So first, I would say is getting the complete overview, and then kind of getting into deeper each of the areas based on what are your interests on, is what I feel. But I think whatever the courses that you feel comfortable, right? That's the way to go about it. The other important part I want to talk about it is, and Nimish said it very nicely, if you're not using the brain, right, literally you're losing the job, right? And I think that's very important. So even now, every time you read the news, every time you look at things, start thinking about it. Can I apply something? Can I apply the technology here, right? If you can, probably think about solving the business problems. And I always say this, there is the innovation is not just to show the tech prowess, right? It is about solving the business problem. So if you start getting into this hat of solving the business problem, right, and then bouncing those thoughts against some of the people, there are a lot of forums you can probably bounce your questions to. You will at least develop that habit saying, oh, can I use the technology to solve this problem, right? It could be as simple as, oh, okay, maybe my Uber comes late every time in whatever area you live, right? Just hypothetical example. Think, how can I fix this problem? Is there a way, if I were a Uber product management, how can I fix this problem, right? Something like that, you will probably to get to habit of thinking. That's how I will look at it.
Rishikesh just said it very nicely. So I was going to address this in the end, but I guess I'll just take it from there, that rather than trying to figure out what are the technologies available and how can I use them, whatever you're using day to day, try and do reverse, that this is a very interesting thing. Which technology would they have used and how would they have engineered this solution, basically? So like the Uber problem that Rishikesh mentioned, right? How are they pricing? Are they using an if then else statement, or are they using an algorithm at the back end? Which technologies are utilized? So even if you just take 5-6 areas, think deep, try and figure out how to solution, because when you go to a company for an interview, they will just ask you to give you a problem and ask you to bring a solution to that problem, right? That's they don't want to for you to figure out the tech, because that they already have decided what they want to do. They want to figure out whether you can approach a particular problem, break them down into smaller chunks, and then bring out a solution by putting these pieces together again, basically. So I have a lot of candidates to apply, right? So when I say 3-4 out of 1,000, when you select, I have people with certification of deep learning, neural networks, this, that, everything. But if you just ask them, that you have to do a simple forecast of a cricket score from 35th to 50th over, how will you do that forecast? Basic understanding of growth rate is not available, right? And smart recruiters will always test for basics and first principles first. So like Dr. Gopal also mentioned that, you can call it 5 forces model, you can call it entry barriers. But the fact that you have to look at competition, the fact that will still remain the same. So I think Jeff Bezos had mentioned that, when they asked him about how will you keep yourself future ready, so he said that I keep focusing on things which will always be true, even 100 years. So even after 100 years, people will want goods to be cheaper, they'll want goods to be delivered faster, and they'll want a much more larger variety, and for us to help them make better decisions. And this will never change. So for you also, I think focusing on solutions, being aware of the tech available, but get your basics really, really strong. And you shouldn't have done a deep neural network course and then not understand how to do a simple linear forecast. So that is something that you should really bother about.
Dressing for the job, essentially, right?
Huh?
Dressing for the job that you want.
Dressing for the job, but so for example, I'll just give you I have a lot of people who come from a computer science background and call themselves data scientists. They've never worked in a domain, so they don't understand the domain. They've never done statistics, so they don't understand how to build models. But the problem is they're computer science people and they don't even know about computer science, right? So I asked them that, I'll give you a job of a data scientist and I give you a 100 GB table. Do you know how to switch on a server? The answer is no. Do you know how to install a database? The answer is no. Do you know how to upload data and set up a data pipeline? The answer is no. Do you know how to write SQL queries? The answer is no. Do you understand the customer? The answer is no. So then what will you do, right? Because all this was beneath their superior intellect. You end up doing a deep neural network course and you land up for a job interview. But when you join the organization, you can't do anything. And if you can do these basics, and I'm sure when you are part of a prestigious institution, they've taken care of all those aspects. But your idea will be to make sure that whatever they've taught you, just make sure that you put it into practice during an interview process as such.
Neha, let me add something to all of this, okay? Are you in the BBA or are you in the MBA class now?
BBA class, sir.
In the BBA class, okay. Very good. Final year student. Okay, good.
Yes.
Neha, there are a large number of companies who come to us for placements. Yeah, every year. Even in the pandemic, a large number of companies came in. Okay, only thing is I could not meet the people during the pandemic, but normally I meet them. And what I find is they look at 3 factors. What are the factors that they look at? They look at 1, do you have fundamental knowledge? Yeah, I won't get into neural networks and all that. This is all too high funda for me. Okay. I will simply say, if you look at marketing, for example, do you know what the 4 P's of marketing are? Then can you apply that in? Take an example of Cadbury's 5-star and you just apply it and show it to me. That means what? You must have a good fundamental knowledge and you must know how to apply it, right? The other very important thing they look out is, do you have the soft skill part? Now, what do I mean by soft skill part? Do you have leadership qualities? Number 1. Do you have an attitude, a positive attitude? Number 2, do you have problem solving skills? Number 3, yeah. Number 4, are you able to work in a team? And number 5, which is very important, is can you communicate properly? These are the 5 or 6 things that people look at, and they are able to gauge you in the next half an hour that I'm sitting with you. Right now, I've listened to what you said. I know in and out about you. I didn't even ask anything. I know in and out about you. That's all. And after the pandemic, people want to know, do you have that craze for knowledge? Right? Because the pandemic has thrown open a new bastion of technology. What I call as Industry 4.0 subjects. Now, what are those subjects? Those are basically data analytics, AI, robotics, some such 4 or 5 subjects are there. Now, do you have some basic knowledge about all of this? Now, what have we done in the college? For us, if we have to change the syllabus, it will take at least 1 year. Why? Because it has to go through the academic council. It has to go through the board of management. All this process is there. So what Vani as the dean and I as the director, both of us sat together and we said, how can we introduce these subjects fast? So we said we will introduce it as a non-credit course of 30 hours. Am I right, Vani? Yeah, we said we'll introduce it as a non-credit course of 30 hours and we will talk about it, right? 30 hours is a long period of time. It's not 1 hour or 2 hours. It's a long period of time, okay? And it's my basic philosophy in life that if I take you out for lunch anywhere, Neha, I want my lunch back. There are no free lunches and there are no free dinners. But I don't want to price it so high that the students feel the pinch. So what did I do? I priced it at 100 rupees per subject for 30 hours. Now, if you had joined that course, Neha, you would have got a fairly good idea about what is AI, what is robotics, etc., etc. Right? And this is all that you are looking at when you are at the BBA level. Right? So I will only tell you one thing. If you want to come up in life, as Nirav says, successful in life, yeah, forget the technical part of the whole thing. That means that fundamental knowledge and the application, all that's a must. There's no doubt about it. But you must have a positive attitude. You must have a problem-solving attitude, a problem-solving, this is number 2. You must have good communication skills, both oral and written. And you should be able to make a PPT and Excel and all this. This is very important. That's why we even had a course on advanced course for Excel. Right? Then you should be able to work in a team, because as an entrepreneur, you are good at working alone. But when you work in a bank or work anywhere in an organization, we do not like people who cannot mingle and who cannot work with others. So I'm looking at team working. And when you work as a team, there's always give and take. There's always negotiation. So you should be good at all of that. And how do I do that? By the group discussion that we have, by the presentation that you make, we try to upskill you in these basic things. And today, post-pandemic, they are saying, do you have some knowledge about it? Not blank. That's why we started this. Now, if you have all of this, I don't think you should really worry about anything. Okay? Good.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Priya?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So there is one question in the YouTube channel. I think some of our students are watching on YouTube also. So there is one question by Piyush. So his question is, which fintech tools needs to be learned to get the job in the fintech industry? So which fintech tools needs to be learned to get the job in the fintech industry? So I would like to ask Rishikesh about it. Rishikesh?
I think the Nimish is the right person. I know the answer, but Nimish runs the fintech himself.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah,
Nimish,
Nimish.
go ahead.
Yeah, Nimish.
Fintech tools, so basically, see, there are a lot of softwares which are being used in different domains, right? So if you are, for example, even within a fintech, you have the same function. So if you are in marketing, you'll have to learn an email marketing software like a Mailchimp, or you'll have to learn a marketing automation software like a CleverTap, or any of these automation tools. If you are in finance, you'll have to learn tools like Anaplan for planning and budgeting. Or you may have to learn, Finacle as a core tool when you're looking at banking and lending as such. If you're doing analytics, obviously basic tools like SQL, Power BI, Tableau, or ClickView. In a couple of years, maybe you'll also have to learn how to use Rockmetric if you want to get these jobs. And then if you're looking at HR, there are tools, a lot of new products which have come in for payroll processing and others, So even within a fintech, you still have your traditional all functions from HR to marketing and finance available. So it's a very broad question, but if you're looking at new age tools, so there, these tools are still new startups which have been in operation for the last 3 to 4 years, So Rishikesh, whatever products he works with, Sanachit has his own products. I have my own product. There are other, colleagues of ours running companies like Scienzy, CrediWatch, others. So there are a lot of these products available, but they will only be accessible once you reach an organization. But if you want to learn as a student, then most of these SaaS softwares like a CRM and others are available for you to do a free trial. And you can just play around there with their demo videos available. It just doesn't take more than a week or so. So for whichever roles you are practicing, there are industry leading SaaS tools available. Just download and use them. And there are a lot of material and videos also available. It doesn't take too much time.
One thing, Vani, I want to tell the student very clearly, okay? And that is, anything that you do, the basic is always on Excel sheet, okay? If you are very strong in Excel, you can always get on to that, number one. And number two, you learn any tool, you can always switch on from that tool to another tool because the basic principles do not change anywhere. Nimesh, maybe I'm wrong in telling you, but
no, sir, you're correct. You're correct.
Yep.
Even when
the basic principles do not change. So if you know one particular tool, you can always apply, think about it, and get on to any other tool that you have. Nothing to worry about. Give you a classic example, okay? When I learned computers in somewhere in 84, 85, and I was doing the planning, the business plan, I used a tool called as Fox Pro. If you remember, Nimesh, you are laughing because I think you will recall Fox Pro almost about 20 years back it was. Yeah. Nobody taught me Excel, but having studied Fox Pro, understood how to operate Fox Pro, Excel became a child's play for me.
So Neha, I'll just, you're correct, sir. And I'll just break it down into 3 parts. The first part, and I think Sanachit will mention that, when I build products, I tell my team to first tell me how would somebody use on Excel. Once they get me a solution and they operate it on Excel, only then we create workflows and then we automate and simplify on the product. So if you know how to send out emails, who to send out emails, how to create lists, shifting between tools is not very difficult, especially because all of you are young and attending the talk, that means you're also keen. So being interested in growing and, trying to take exposure, that will keep you safe, I think. Sanchit, otherwise.
नहीं, पहली बात तो है कि नौकरी तो टूल के बेसिस पे कोई भी नहीं देता. So उसमें भी दो तरह के हैं. So you have your proprietary tools which you will only ever get to use once you're there in enterprise. So for instance, at Katina we have our own set of tools that we use. So Katina के अंदर everything is open source, but we use open source to build our own specialized tooling. That's it. And you're not going to get that tooling anywhere else. Which means I can't go out looking for people who knows those things, to begin with. And then there are other general purpose tools like, Excel. If you're into project planning and management, then you have Jira, etc., etc. And those come up, but nobody's looking for, tool operators. I mean, it's not the same thing at all. As long as your first principles are sound, we are more than happy getting you in. Matter of fact, even for developer jobs, we don't always require people to know how to code. So we spend good amount of time teaching people to code. I don't expect anybody to know that. Matter of fact, a lot of my ComSci grads from back in college never knew Java. These were ComSci grads who never knew Java to begin, and they got decent jobs at Microsoft, Google, etc. Because their first principles were strong enough. And that's what we expect. We expect that of a developer, of a BA, or rather for any other profile. If you have the propensity to grasp things quickly, that's it. That's all we need.
I think just a quick addition, right? When I was working with Infosys long back, Narayanamurthy used to say, we hire people for their learnability. Because the technology will keep changing, the tools will keep changing. As long as you have a learnability, you will probably grow.
Actually, before setting up Katina, I actually used to be an educator myself. So I was an assistant professor at Rajiv Gandhi University. And one of the courses that I used to run was in entrepreneurship management. And I ran it for maybe 2 or 3 semesters, something like that. And the second or third semester that I ran it for, a student asked, "Sir, aapne kya kiya hai?" Okay. And then I thought, what? They're right. I mean, I have no experience of doing this thing ever. Maybe I should try putting it into practice. And I had no experience ever of doing this thing in practice. And so I did. And I learned on the job. But the point is, I had the propensity and I had the gall of leaving my comfort zone and attempting something that I really knew would work. So yeah, it goes whether you want to be an entrepreneur or whether you want to get a job. That propensity to learn and the gall to go out of your comfort zone is what's going to matter. That's it.
Get your fundamentals right. That's all that is required. Get your fundamentals, get your basics knowledge. Once you have that, you can develop anything and everything. It's all within your power. Yeah. Priya, next question, please.
Yeah. Sahil?
I have one more question. As the financial world says that we shouldn't put all our fruits in one basket. So I would ask all the speakers to just share their input. If a company should go all out on AI right now, or there is still some element left where they have to invest in AI, fintech tools, as well as go with the traditional practices that are going on.
Rishikesh, I think you operate a legacy business yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, and typically a lot of CIOs are battling this question because. But I'm glad that you're thinking like CIO at this moment, which is a good start. The answer to that is not a one fit solution for all, right? I know everybody wants to adopt the newer technologies and at the same time run the business. So you cannot basically change the tires of a running car, right? You have to make sure your running car, the running business, you have to still run it. At the same time, kind of have a strategy to adopt the newer technologies, maybe in the next 2 years to 5 years timeline, right? Based on what business you are in, what context you are in, what are the priorities. So this is entirely a business plus tech decision that you get to, right? That's one part of it. The second part is your ability to adopt that technology and kind of make the most of it, right? If you are, let's say, basic, I don't know the example, but if you're in a basic business which really doesn't or may not benefit much with the adoption of AI, you still adopt because somebody else is adopting or there's a craze going on, right? That's very important. So I was reading a Licious case study. If you not sure if you guys know, Licious is a meat delivery platform which has come up recently in the last couple of years. The CEO said a very fantastic thing. Just because Swiggy delivers in 15 minutes, I don't need to rush and deliver that, right? So it's because just because my competition is adopting some technology, I need not rush and adopt the technology. It's simple as that, right? What are my main objectives of running business? Okay, that's very important. And then the technology comes there to saying, is that going to solve my problem? Is that going to be aligned to my objective? That's how I would look at it.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think it's time to wind up now. Dr. Priya, I think there are no more questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So we'll wind up now. Over to you, Dr. Sapna.
Ma'am, we'll take a photograph.
Yeah. That we will take in the end. Okay. Yeah. So I request all the speakers to be there after the vote of thanks also, so that we can take a photograph. In the meantime, I would like to call upon Dr. Sapna for the photograph, for the vote of thanks.
Yeah, ma'am. It was indeed a very interesting session where we have learned a lot of things on AI and artificial intelligence and fintech. Before me placing my vote of thanks, I would again like to mention that we at DYPUSM have a 3-year BBA course, the admission for which is open. We have a 2-year MBA course, the admission for which is open. So whoever wishes to take admission can get in touch with us. We also have our own YouTube channel, that is DYPUSM webinar. Yeah. So whoever wishes to see the past webinars conducted so far, or have a glimpse of the upcoming events, or to attend or just see or view the current webinar, I would request the participants or anyone to kindly like, share and subscribe our channel. The subscription is free of cost. I would now like to place my thanks to the university officials, the Chancellor, Vice Chancellor, Registrar, and our own chairman to giving us the opportunity to conduct this webinar. I would also like to place my thanks to Professor Dr. R Gopal and Director of DYPUSM, Dr. Vani Kama, Dean of DYPUSM, for giving the opportunity to conduct this webinar. Dr. Priya for conducting such a wonderful, insightful webinar. Our own speakers for the day, Mr. Rishikesh, Mr. Sanchit, Mr. Nimish, and our own alumni, Mr. Neerav Modi, for giving your valuable time and making this event a grand success. I would also like to place my thanks to our associate partners, Indian Merchant Chambers, MSME Chamber of Commerce and Industry of India, New Delhi, WTC World Trade Center, Navi Mumbai, Maharashtra Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture, MCCIA, Global Exports India, Global TV. I would also like to place my thanks to our viewers who are viewing this channel, our own faculty members, our students, and whoever is viewing us on the Global TV. I'm very much thankful for making this event a grand success. Thank you so much.